Welcome back to Season 6 of the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falasz, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again this week because I've got a returning guest and teammate with me here today. And as we're often told by our listeners, you all enjoy his insights and his experience in the multisite space. I know I do, and that's Adin Bradley. Hi, Adin.
Hey, Jamie.
Good to see you. Now, typically when Aiden joins me behind the mic, we talk about operations, streamlining, standardization, all things that have to come together and work like gears turning together in unison for real sustainable profitability and growth to be experienced, right? But today we're going to take a little bit different track, and it's based on our experience as a company working with many clients who start to grow, maybe get to 3 locations, 5 locations, sometimes even 7 locations. And as the founder and CEO, you feel like things are going pretty well, but they could be better. You put in a lot of time and hard work, nights, weekends, maybe that's time you'd like to spend with your family. And you're juggling what feels like everything because that's worked for you so far. Maybe you're still in the chair a few days a week. Maybe you've moved to a full-time CEO role. But in any case, that CEO role carries a heavy burden. We all know that. All the responsibility, all the management, overseeing every aspect of the success that you've built inside and outside of each location's 4 walls. And you touch every piece of it, or at a minimum, feel like you have to be involved in every conversation, every decision, because again, this is your organization and you have to make sure it's all done the way that you want it to be, right? Wrong. I know some of you might not want to hear this, but in order to grow, and I mean really expand with that synchronization, I'll call it, as an organization and not just a collection of locations, you have to have proper leadership teams in place. And one that you can really rely on to treat your business like it's their own business, really. Now, that's not easy. We get it. We know this is your baby, but I promise you, what you likely don't see, because we can't know what we don't know, is that it's holding your entire organization back when you're working too much in your business rather than on your business. And we're going to take a look at that. We're also going to take a look at your leadership team today and why you need one if you don't have one already, and how, as CEO, you can use that team to really grow the organization that you've been dreaming about. So, with that, Aiden, welcome back because I'm on a soapbox. If you could please help me down from that so we can provide our listeners with some guidance and things to talk about.
Yeah, it was a great intro, and I'll echo your sentiments, and I will say to our listeners today that really, really, really want founders, leaders, CEOs to listen deeply to what we're saying because if any of this resonates, we are your mirror today. So we usually talk about people, process, and patient flow. We're not going to talk about patient flow today. We are going to talk about people and process, and particularly the founder, the owner or owners. And we are going to probably have one of our most radically candid conversations that we've had in a long time. So I'm really looking forward to chatting, and I'm looking forward to some feedback from our listeners on whether or not we touch soft spot.
Absolutely. And we might touch a nerve on a couple of things
Oh
because,
yeah.
like I said, you can't know what you don't already know. I mean, we say this all the time. It applies to literally everything in our lives. And we're not here to offend anyone. Let's be clear about that. But I like that you and I can have candid conversations because we get a lot of good feedback from that. It actually helps people when you're honest with them. Imagine that.
Yes, I agree.
So here's what I'm thinking. What came to mind when you and I were talking about putting an episode together about this was that first question. How are you a CEO if you have to have your hands in everything?
Mhm.
Tell me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I thought about this, and here's what I'll say. If if every decision still has to go through you as the founder, the CEO, you're functioning as the bottleneck.
Yeah, good point.
So, if you ask me, what does becoming a CEO look like? This is
Yeah,
the hardest transition, right? And because now you're shifting from producer to leader. Your value isn't doing the work. It's not chair side. And we will talk about, remaining chair side and all that because there's no X number that you have to be there. But this is really what I want to get to. This is like one of the most important, impactful statements I wanted to make today. In shifting from producer to leader, your value is not chair side and doing the work.
right.
Okay. It's building people and systems that can scale. That's what it is. So I
Yeah.
want to repeat that. It's not in the clinical side. It's making sure that you have the right team in place. You're building systems that can scale and be repeatable because the more offices you have or the larger you get, the less impactful your clinical skills are going to become because they're going to be drowned out by other associates. And
Mhm.
how and processes, how you scale those is really going to be the determinant.
Yeah, and you can't scale those if you are micromanaging every little thing or you're in the chair too much. And we get that some of you really have that love of dentistry where you don't want to leave the chair completely. Maybe you're going to still be in the chair 1 day a week or whatever that looks like for you to make it work, but you still need a leadership team underneath you to help things run smoothly. So, regardless of your model, you've got to hand over certain aspects of the business to a leadership team. So, what I'll ask you, Aiden, since you're in multi site and have been for so long, what kinds of things can get turned over? I mean, we know that you need operations leaders, but beyond that, what does that look like? And then maybe we'll get into some of the layers and things.
Yeah, as usual, excellent question. A lot of it is dependent on, the size of the organization. If is it
Yeah.
multi-office or is it, a super practice? But I think first and foremost is making sure that the key areas of the operation, clinical, RCM, compliance, to a point HR, leadership development, and anything that touches those, you have somebody in place, first and foremost. And then the team has to be empowered. And a lot of times I get a little bit of resistance because I will hear, I did that once, but Sally or Johnny was not very good at doing it. And I said, so I hear that I hear and understand it that you feel that you got burned. But it doesn't mean that the process or the thought behind it wasn't the right one. Now we shifted into it was a person. So don't not put the right structure in place
Yeah.
because the last one didn't work. Do a postmortem on what didn't work with the people and put people in place that can actually carry out what the vision is. And that's where I see a lot of this is that if you come in from a stance of being jaded, you're going to make decisions based on a bias that can actually be counterintuitive.
Fair point. I'm glad you said that. And just to further your point, it can be a people issue or more specifically, a person issue. Maybe that person didn't fit the bill for what you needed to be a good leader. Maybe you need help deciding what a good leader is. And that's okay too. You can't be all things to your organization. So I know you're good at helping organizations support that, finding the right people to put in the right seats, I think is how you put it.
Yeah, I mean, you really just encapsulated what we look for. And what I think the genesis of this conversation really is, Jamie, is not looking so much at the team, because that's very important, but really for the founders to look inward and say, have I given the team the right tools? Okay.
Mhm.
And one statement that rings true that I will say is that if your leadership team is not empowered to lead, then you don't have a leadership team. You've got highly paid messengers. That's what you have.
Yeah,
And I see this because I kind of chuckled as I was looking at this as well, because I see this in a lot of areas where they say, well, I don't micromanage. And I'm like, well, you're in every meeting, so you do micromanage. And
absolutely.
really all that's happening is your leadership team is regurgitating what you said. And with some of the leaders, I said, listen, the reason that I'm advising not to be in there is because there's an unfair balance in the power authority, and I hate using those words, but the owner is always going to have the most influence. So, if we look back at the days when we were all young kids in school, remember when the principal used to come into the room and sit and watch the teacher, and it's like, we don't really behave this way. This like,
No.
we're all told to be on our best behavior, and everybody's kind of looking at the principal, to gauge what the behavior is. And I use that anecdote because I've seen this where a general manager or an office manager or a director will be conducting a meeting with the owner in the room, and I watched this in real time, and everybody's kind of watching the reaction of the owner more than they're hearing the words, if that makes sense.
Oh,
And
yeah, it does.
so to me, what I have done is I've asked the owners to extract themselves from that meeting and then get a synopsis from the leader about what needs to be done, and that's when they can kind of war game it. Because not only you cutting the leader, like your manager, off at the knees, really, what the words that they're saying are not as impactful as the body language they're getting from the owner. And if the owner is either A, just a micromanager, then why have a management team? Or
Mhm.
B, if you don't have the right person that you trust and verify that they're doing things, but you cannot be a micromanager, then let us help you identify the kind of talent that you need to go forth so you can scale and grow. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next coming minutes, but I just kind of wanted to lay that out again. So for those that maybe did not hear me correctly, if you don't empower your leadership team to lead, all you have is high paid messengers.
Agree. Full stop right there. So, I mentioned a minute ago about talking about layers. And because you and I talked about this recently, we know that those layers need to be empowered to do a couple of things. They decide, they direct, and they delegate. And then you said something else to me the other day that should be obvious from a leadership perspective, but it might not be to some. You said the CEO does not get involved beyond the leadership level. And I have this vision in my mind of a 3 to 5 location group, and having been involved in some of this in the past, the doctor or CEO is talking to ex assistant or this person and telling him how to do this process, and it feels really chaotic. And then you've got a regional director in the corner not saying a word.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that level and where the communication should be. And you mentioned a word, legitimize, as well. Legitimize the leadership
Mhm.
team. I jotted that down from our conversation. So let's talk about that and how that needs to look in order to prevent that chaos, essentially.
Yeah, I love that question because, our engagements, as our listeners know, are genuinely tailor-made to the client needs. And we began an engagement a few months ago, sort of in the northern Midwest, where I'm serving as the actual COO of the business. The owner has given me full autonomy to build out a new team. And then some of these engagements all the way down to strategic consulting sort of advisement. But let's go to the one outlier.
Yeah.
We built the team, and I told them very early on, the doc, who will be a guest of ours very soon to talk about the impact that we've made,
Mhm.
has given me full autonomy. And I report to him directly. And the one thing I've asked to do is for this to work, this is how this engagement is going to work. And then with my team, and I consider them my team and I love them to death. I said, you'll never see me managing two levels down. And I coach owners to never manage two levels down.
Mm.
Because in your question, you got me thinking, you mentioned the word legitimize. If the owner is going to an office manager to talk to them around the regional, right, or ops director, whoever it is, number one, it's a cardinal sin if that top ops person does not know what's going on because they're not going to know how to respond to questions and answers.
Yeah.
Secondly, and most importantly, if the messages are conflicting, they are going to automatically go to what the owner told them. And that may run counter to what the ops leader is trying to do because there's a lot of moving parts that generally that level of minutia doesn't need to be qualified all the time. So in short, you can start now having mixed messages and then what you're going to do is you are going to invite those team members to go around your leadership team directly to you. And then and I hear this all the time. They're coming to me for everything. And I said, yeah, they are, because you basically, like Pavlov's dog, have trained them to do that.
Yeah.
So they're like, why am I going to, Jamie or Aiden? I'm going directly to the owner because they've talked to me. That's how you de-incentivize people. That's how you strain their confidence, and that's how you create a lot of confusion. And then, I mean, we could sit here all day of all the kind of negative impacts. This is where owners got to get really comfortable trusting and validating and verifying what their leadership is doing. And then if the metrics coming back are not providing the level of competency that they want, then consider some development, maybe some additional resources, some coaching. And after you've exhausted that, maybe it is a leadership problem that you need to change. But don't create the problem first and then complain if there's a problem.
Right, because you've just created natural pushback from your staff. Well, hey, the founder told me to do this, founder told me to do that. And it comes down to respect for me
Mhm,
because actually it comes down to two things: trust and respect. Now, as CEO, I've hired a leadership team or promoted from within. We have a leadership team that's a layer that I trust to get the job done. I shouldn't have to check in with, "Hey, did you do this? Hey, did you ask that person that? Hey, go ask that person that." That's not how leadership works.
mhm,
So, trust for one, and respect for another. And the respect comes from that layer down, that second layer down from the CEO. They need to be taught, just like you mentioned with Pavlov's dog, they need to be taught to respect the leadership layer
mhm.
because that's who the CEO trusts to get the job done. So unless you have those two things working in tandem, that whole layer that you've got going on between CEO leadership and the rest of the staff isn't going to work. And if it doesn't work in one location, it sure as heck isn't going to work across 5, 7, 10, 20, 50.
Well, what you said is really important because it will get exponentially worse. It won't be a
Oh, yeah.
linear problem.
Yeah.
Because you'll be adding resources along the way, and the cracks will become, much bigger. So in our conversation, as we talk about that age-old saying about, working in the business and then working on the business, and I'll wait till you
Right.
bring that part up, we'll kind of give some real clarity behind what those are, because as much as they're developing their people, they have to have some self-awareness too, and
Yes.
really have to ask themselves really tough questions. So if managers, like if some are micromanagers, right? And your leadership team is afraid to make a decision, right? For example. And when we spoke about this, you got to ask, like, have they been coached or have they been punished when they've come to you with issues or questions, right?
Yeah.
Because that is going to dictate how they lead. Are they leading from a position of security in that I may make a decision that doesn't work sometimes and we will pivot, or this is worse, I am so paralyzed by indecision because I'm afraid if it's wrong, I'm going to get yelled at or blamed. Therefore, I'm just going to sit here on my hands and not do anything until I'm told what to do. That certainly is not a good way to run any kind of business, and it chips away at motivation, at culture, autonomy and purpose, all the things that we talk about. Really, this is the area that all of those things that we talk about, if we don't get this particular area of running the business right, Jamie, the rest has literally has no chance of success.
Yeah, agree. And I'm gonna layer in one other thing here because now I've all these things are coming to mind. It's accountability.
Mhm.
So if you have a leadership team that where the CEO doesn't trust them to make decisions and you've got the layer under them that doesn't respect them, why should they be accountable? They can't be accountable to the decisions they're not allowed to make. So if things are going wrong, if the wheels are falling off the bus and they don't have the power to make decisions and make good decisions within the business, they're not gonna be able to be accountable to what happens after that.
Right. But they will be blamed. Because
Yeah,
someone's gotta take the blame, but no,
yeah.
you're 100% right.
Like you and I talked about, the real issue is that they haven't been mentored or supported in the right way. That
Right.
leadership team has not. And like you said, again, you might not have an issue at 3 locations or 5 locations, and things might be going okay, but I promise you, these issues are coming unless you are set up the right way with a team that you can trust and a layer under them that respects that team that you trust.
Mhm.
So, let's say you don't have a leadership team. How do you implement that in your own business?
Geez, I'm shocked by that question.
They're
Um,
foreshadowing it all.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I read something once that if you see a gun in the first scene of a play, it's gonna be used later, right? So there's
100%.
foreshadowing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I think we hear this a lot, and working in the business is solving today's issues, right? It's putting out the proverbial fires.
Mhm.
Working on the business is going back to what we said, it is building systems so problems happen less often. So what the CEO is doing or the founder's doing is setting up his team. He or she is given their vision. And then every decision that's made should answer the question, does this get us closer to our vision or not?
Mhm.
Instead of just every day responding to the urgency at hand, and then, now the business is running you, you're not running it. So we can talk about, working in, on it, or whatever. If you're not strategic with a good empowered team, then you are just simply going to come in every day, figure out what's wrong, try to put your finger on the mole that's jumping out of the thing and play whack-a-mole all day. And then down the road, you're like, I'm not any further to my goal than I was 6 months or a year or 2 years. That's why, we talk about getting the systems in place prior to growth. So as you scale, you have a proven method that you can either buy or even if it's a de novo, a distress practice or whatever, you have all the systems and people in place that you can ramp that up very quickly, that investment, because you are expending capital dollars.
Mhm.
And how do you retrieve those most efficiently and get that new office or offices on board? And for me, that's where I think leaders need to be really cognizant of, if I'm struggling at this level, how do I justify in my mind growing and it getting better? It's just not.
Yeah, you won't. Okay, so if I am, and I'll be really direct about it. If I'm a doctor, I have 3 locations, I've put off any kind of leadership, I'm doing everything, my hand is in everything, I'm directing everything. Who do I hire first? Who's my first leader? Who do I need to build this out?
It's an impactful question because you kind of don't know where to start, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that a top operations person that has been there, done that. And I'm not saying a homegrown person can't do that, but if a homegrown person could do it, it would be getting done. Okay. Let's
Okay,
kind of just look at
fair,
it that
fair
way.
enough.
I know that's kind of blunt, but that's what it is.
Okay.
Um, if it's an internal person that's been homegrown that just needs, you know, to be turned loose, that's fine. But I would have someone that really understands the key metrics. They can evaluate talent. They have a strong backbone to tell the owner or the founders things that may not be something they wanna hear right away, that radical candor that they talk about. And I think
Mhm.
from there, they need to be concurrently assessing the operations and where the holes are. And if you think about it, the entire cycle of service, everything from marketing to answering the phones, to scheduling an appointment, to treatment planning, case acceptance, production, claim submission, collecting dollars, posting, rinse, wash, repeat. Where in that circle is your bottleneck? And then I would start building out my team from there. And I would then, get subject matter experts to own each area that they have. And then you'll quickly find where the link is because you'll also have financial goals, right? You have to have a certain amount of revenue coming in every month to pay the bills and the debt service. So let's just start there. Once
Mhm.
we are cash flow positive, we can start talking about adding either positions, operatories, locations, and such. And then the doc can help on the clinical side, obviously with help from the analytics that we help with or your operations person is what type of dentistry we doing? How strong is
Mhm.
our hygiene program? Do we really have a good protocol? How many new patients are coming in a month? Is our patient base aging out with us? What's our reappointment rate look like? Someone that cannot do all of those things at the same time has really not been there, done that. And I'll kind of I'll end with this. I know this wasn't part of our conversation the other day, but as I get more involved with some of these organizations and I'm involved with the hiring, I ask two really important questions. I say to every applicant that I'm talking to, because for me, it's not an interview, it's a conversation. I say, Jamie, tell me the most difficult professional situation that you've ever encountered and tell me how you handled it. And I may have said this before, and then I'll ask you what the best situation was. And what I'm really curious about is first of all, are they listening to the question? And can they articulate it? And if you have been in the trenches and can't think of a really bad situation that's gone sideways, either clinically or patient satisfaction, maybe an employee, whatever it is, or team member, I've got to start to think, how strong are you really? Because we should all be able to rip off about 5 or 6 scenarios on both ends of that pendulum in
Yeah.
real time. So having a proven leader that can articulate the strategy and making sure that aligns with the owner is critical.
Yeah, and I think having the right leader in place helps everybody else to stay in their lane. And that's not to say that there can't be cross-functional support, right? That's not what I'm saying. Just like within our own organization, there are certain things that I work on, there are certain things that you work on. Like someone's not gonna, come to me for multi-site operations or to set up a leadership team, right? But I think there's a big difference between keeping people siloed and working collaboratively, but still having that respect for your leadership layer.
Well, absolutely. You and I do that in real time, and we know intuitively when there's either a question, a concern, someone calls, there's a solution that needs. We all know exactly who to go to here at
Yeah.
Polaris because our leadership team is designed around subject matter expertise, and we all have some part in each other's roles. And
Yeah.
I think that's where the magic happens. So for our listeners, here's a perfect example. And this is totally off script. Um, and sorry if I'm going to embarrass you with some kudos here, but
Uh-oh.
you know, you designing our podcast material and subject matter is very difficult. Scheduling all this. I don't think anyone sees the mice running around in the wheel behind the scenes to make all the magic happen. I just have to show up and talk to you. Now, if you put this on my plate, I gotta tell you, I'm not sure that Group Practice Accelerator is gonna run as well as it does. It's just not my thing. And it works, right? So you use the example of if an operational situation came to you, where do you go to? It would only be fair and incumbent upon me to kind of showcase the value that you're bringing to the team and where all of us know where to get the answer that we need. And we
Yeah.
push information up and we have information that comes down. So I think we definitely practice what we preach. There's no doubt about it because I don't think that we could be successful doing what we do if we did not have that level of autonomy. And one thing I want to add that I did have in here is that when we talk about decision making, because you started to bring that up, I want everyone to hear this because I'm working with a particular client now. I'm not gonna they're gonna know who I'm talking about right now. So hello. Um, we live in the gray. And I said this the other day. Our jobs are not black and white. If they were, they would be very easy,
Oh,
right?
sure.
This is the question, this is a scenario, this is the answer. Just do it. We live in that gray area where multiple avenues could potentially be the right one. Combining all them, maybe not. So what I say is when we talk about how decision making happens, we talk about, do we need our gut or do we need our evidence? And for those out there that have ever followed Kobe, I'm a high fact finder. And I became a high fact finder from experience because when you are too quick to start without validating, you can make a lot of mistakes. And what I find is that by fact finding first and pressure testing it, you will limit the amount of mistakes that you made. So
Mhm.
your gut can identify an issue, but it's the data that validates it. So
100%.
if,
Yeah.
as we talk about how these decisions are being made, how do you qualify them? How do you quantify them each time and articulate them?
Yeah. Interesting. That's a really interesting point. You really have to have both.
Mhm.
Gut's good, evidence is better. One supported by the other. Okay, we're running out of time, and I really want to get to this one aspect because we were talking about, hey, you're the CEO. You have this leadership team you're starting to get in place. Maybe you call Aiden because you need some help setting that up. Understandable. This is not intuitive, is what I'm saying. So do get support somewhere. What I want to ask you is, what can I do in terms of working on my business instead of working in my business? Let's talk about those do's and don'ts.
Okay. Yeah. So, a true CEO is not the person with their hands in everything.
Yeah.
Okay. A true CEO is the person who builds an organization where people know how to lead, they decide, and they can execute without chaos. I
Mhm.
know it sounds like a lot, but what a true CEO is doing is they're actually taking their hands off of everything, and they have built systems and put people in place, and they are the ones that are going to carry out your vision. So the don'ts are getting in their way, overruling them in front of their own team, which is a giant cardinal sin for me,
Oh, yeah.
and emasculating them in a way. Now, if
Mhm.
you want, there's definitely going to be differences of opinion, and I think a healthy confrontation at points that's professional, respectful is really good because I think that susses out a lot of great ideas.
Yeah.
But what you really need, and I had this compliment the other day, and I really took it to heart with a new client, the one I was telling you about that we began working with. He texted me and said, "I'm really glad we can talk to each other in the candor that we do, that we are really transparent. Neither one of us is beating around the bush." And he has made me feel really comfortable. And nearly all of our clients have, don't get me wrong, because we would not be effective, nor do we want to work with people. They're going to tell us how to do our job. We're not for you, right?
Yeah.
If you're gonna come in to pay us for you to tell us what to do, like, that's just not what we do. And I thought about that and I thought, gosh, what sounds so natural was that statement that was so impactful. So that's definitely one of the do's. Invite ideas, invite healthy confrontation if you need. Don't
Yeah.
stifle them. Don't make their ideas feel less than what they are. And I'll finish with this. I know we're running upon time. You can make a no sound like a yes when you give the why,
Oh,
and
good
I've done
point.
that. See, every now and again, Jamie, I come up with a new one for you, and I do think we've had situations where I have sort of felt at the same time both a little bit of pride and a little bit of disappointment in the sense that someone took a lot of time to think of something, and I was really proud of the work they put in, the thought process, the pressure testing it. And I was disappointed that I have to say it won't work because. And what
Yeah.
I have found nearly every time is that when you walk through the why, they now have a new tool in their toolbox and say, I didn't factor that particular point in in my theory, right? I did not identify the reaction to the action, if you will. And now, I promise you, when they come back with another good idea, they've had one more area to kind of pressure test that. And now their ideas become more sound. That area
Mhm.
of gray that we talk about, the criteria for success and the obstacles have been identified, and the best and worst case scenarios have been identified, and they know exactly who's accountable for it. Then I'm all in. How can I be a resource for you to carry out this new initiative that you have? Did you notice how I said, how can I do it for you? How can I
Yeah.
be there for you? And that part I love.
I do too. You turn something into a positive that makes sense for everyone. Now, you talked about your do's and don'ts, and I love Aiden's perspective here because, as everybody knows who's listening, he's directly on site. He's working within the business with you, right? So you can work on the business. I had a couple of my own do's and don'ts. I want to start with the don'ts. And some of them were exactly what you had. Mine I called don't be a fixer. This is why you have a leadership team,
Yep.
right? Don't jump in and undermine them. I think you said something very similar. And also be very clear with your direction. No vague replies, no ambiguity when you talk to your leadership team. This prevents micromanagement. It prevents misunderstanding, potential blowups, because things fall apart from time to time. There's no perfect organization, but clear communication is easy, right? So just that's a do and a don't at the same time. On my do list, I was looking at it from a more sort of a global aspect, like
Mhm.
decide what working on the business looks like for you. Are you still in the chair 1 day a week? Are you in it 2 days a week? Or are you not at all? Have you transitioned completely from clinician to CEO? So for me, that's one of my starting points. If you have this deep desire to practice dentistry, maybe you're practicing 1 day a week. I don't know.
Mhm.
From a business development standpoint, if you've transitioned into CEO most or all of the time, you need to be networking. You need to be going to events and trade shows and supporting your brand. Business development is important, and just getting your organization out there. How are you going to grow if you don't know anybody? Simple as that.
Yep. I
What?
I
Oh,
agree.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I agree 1,000%, and also, the bigger you get, it makes it much easier for you t for the organization to be less dependent on you, and
Yeah.
one of the struggles that we have is we have a lot of owners, especially when their name's on the building, say they o quote, unquote, "They only wanna see me," right? And you have to find a way to make yourself less visible to them outside of the branding side, right, to be
Yes.
seen, but from a clinical standpoint, how do you promote your associates or
Hmm.
potential equity partners to be the face of the clinical side of the company?
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
what you have now is the same level of clinical competency without having the owner be the one to do it. You don't feel like you're getting a B player just because the owner didn't see you. And I think that's where you're getting closer to utopia.
I agree. I agree. This should be a team effort that, yes, highlights you. It's your organization. You have something to be proud of, but you need support to enable you to grow that organization. So, my last thing was just a cadence meeting with your leadership team. That was it. You kind of covered that too. So, we kind of aligned on our do's and don'ts, but I know we're running short on time here, Aiden. Thank you so much for coming on here, and I want to pay you quick kudos too because I know that people trust you with their business to come in and build that team and really get things streamlined so they can add locations and reproduce this along the way because we know there's speed bumps.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think that's what gives us great pride in what we do, and I think it's why our listeners call us. And thank you for always sharing your insight and bringing us on to talk about topics that are really important to owners.
It's team effort. It's team
You
effort.
you
Well, to all
got
of
it.
our listeners, we love the questions that you send us, so keep them coming, and we'll keep delivering the content that you ask for. As always, if you want to learn about any of our Polaris expert advisory services, or maybe there's a topic we haven't covered that you'd like to hear about, you can send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, and be sure to visit our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com, where you'll find weekly articles to grow and support your healthcare business, along with access to all podcast episodes, events, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a colleague, and be sure to leave us a rating on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator podcast.